I don't know how many people know this, but on, was it Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday, the choir sang at the Warriors game. It was Pride Night. And we had some additional members who sometimes sing with us from the Berkeley choir, so we brought in all of our ringers, and we rocked it, I just want to say. You can see on Facebook, I took a video, and you can see it on our church Facebook page or my own. It is really amazing. People around us were drawing breath. So it's not just proud Vanessa saying that. So, and Akane directed us, which was amazing because Mark was away. Akane did a beautiful job. So please check it out. There is that old saw about may you live in interesting times. But after certainly even just this last week of feeling my insides clench and churn, feeling like I was regularly vibrating at a frequency that made it hard to be present to anything else, I am wondering about the blessing of living in interesting times. And you and I are certainly living in them right now. And probably, my guess is, except some experts out there at compartmentalizing or numbing, for most of us, all of our best compartmentalizing and numbing coping mechanisms cannot shut out what now is breathing hot against the back of our necks. So it seemed like maybe you and I should talk about how we handle what might be shaking and waking some of you as well these days. If I had to put a name on it, and I did, I'd call it uncertainty, and I did. Having advertised as much in the sermon title and blurb this week, I got a couple emails from some folks wondering if they'd call it uncertainty. Someone wrote saying they thought it was better termed anxiety, another that it was fear. But let's stick to uncertainty for right now, and as you'll see, they all interweave. Uncertainty, of course, is most simply just the absence of certainty. It is the reality of not knowing an outcome in ways that we can rely on to make 100% assured decisions. And there are levels of uncertainty. You and I, for instance, can imagine having just taken a breath in this last moment that there is near 100% chance, given statistics, because I have not lost someone yet in 30 years of ministry during worship, that you will get the next breath. And given our staff and our history, our fabulous building staff and our history at the church, there is a 99% chance that when worship is over, there will be coffee and tea waiting for you. And if there's been some incredible debacle, that it will come soon enough. And I bet there are a whole bunch of things that don't feel certain in your life, and some perhaps that aren't ever going to be certain for some of us. There are huge uncertainties in our lives, and some small but bothersome, and some that we've just learned to live with. We are talking this month in church about repair. That's the theme for November. You can see some questions and invitations in your order of service up on the bulletin boards. It's a perfect theme for post-election life. And even in the small world of talking about and doing the work of repair in our lives, just there is so much uncertainty. So let's use it as an example. Will you and your sister, or whoever it is from whom you are estranged, ever mend that estrangement? I bet there is a range of odds for that answer, for each of you, to that question alone, depending on the preciousness of whatever relationship is broken, your motivation to fix it, the story behind the rending of it. And based on the whole equation around that, you and I might live more or less peacefully in the face of the uncertainty around that repair. Just that uncertainty has so much complexity around it for how we live with it. And I realize too that if and when we step into the work of repair in ways small and large, there is always uncertainty. I wonder, in fact, if that uncertainty isn't the main reason we often avoid that work. There's the vulnerability and uncertainty of stepping into the moments where there's pain. And there's the vulnerability and uncertainty of admitting that we have been part of the harm or the wrong, if that's part of it. And there is the uncertainty and vulnerability of asking why and how the harm happened. And there is the overall uncertainty about how all of it will play out, all the possible imagined and unimagined places that effort of repair will take us, and whether it will work, or whether all this fear and risk and vulnerability will go nowhere at all. We don't like uncertainty, most of us. As a species, generally, we don't like uncertainty. And why would we? Though conceivably, places and discovery of things on the other side of it could mean our wildest dreams come true, treasures and love affairs, paradise on the other side of the mountain we know that has protected us. But there's so much that isn't good that can happen too. So generally, better to manage uncertainty down to a minimum, no? To some degree, yes. Freud, I am told, thought that things like uncertainty, even small ones, were uncomfortable for us because they connected us back to the ultimate uncertainty, the one we avoided with every defense and defensive strategy our psychic toolbox could dream up. Just like Naomi Shihab Nye, the poet, writes about the sorrow that catches the thread of all sorrows. And uncertainty in our lives, especially one that feels threatening, can recall us to our fundamentally vulnerable and uncertain life. And that is a hard feeling to be put back in touch with. One we fight against feeling, most of us. I remember hearing years ago when I was doing my chaplaincy training that one of the hardest emotions or states for human beings to live with was uncertainty. That we, as chaplains, shouldn't be surprised if patients were relieved, if there even was a sort of lift in the room sometimes when a patient was given the worst possible news, because at least the time of not knowing was over. That certainty could trap people, make them feel stripped of agency and powerless, and there was relief in the ability to make choices with knowledge and agency, even if it meant through and over rough landscapes. I wonder how all of this lands for all of you right now. This talk of the landscape of uncertainty and how it lands in our bodies and our spirits. Does it ring true to some of how you might have been feeling the last few weeks, days? Could it describe some of the vibrating inside us? Because, of course, we are swimming in collective uncertainty right now. And in this church, like all houses of worship, we are not allowed to name a party or a candidate for lots of legitimately good reasons. Each of us is called to translate what we believe, our values, into our political choices. And I am a huge fan of drawing a big political tent. And as Santana pointed out, rights and dignities around so many people we love are at risk in this particular election. Our GLBT beloveds, our immigrant siblings, the rights of women to protect and govern their own lives and bodies, our earth, our sacred national inheritance of institutions and bodies of law are all under explicit threat. So that's a big existential uncertainty. What do we do with all that? How do we crawl through and out of it? How are you doing that? It's a great conversation for coffee hour, actually. Well, here are some things I've gathered this week and this month. First, we remember that actually, we always live in uncertain times and have through time. In the previous century, in the 1900s, just call out some of the uncertainties of this nation and its life together. I hear a whole bunch of wars, civil rights, 9/11, assassinations of key leaders. What was that one? Someone? Poverty, war, Y2K, education, AIDS pandemic, Roe v. Wade, Stonewall, COVID, NAFTA, Cuban Missile Crisis, mutually assured destruction, right? All of this has been part of and there are things, Chinese Exclusion Act, the internment of Japanese Americans, right? All of it, Rodney King, all of these things, Jim Crow, lynchings, the Freedom Riders, all of it has been part of the last 100 or so years of this nation, right? And we have lived as a nation through them, in the face of them. And that doesn't include all of the intimate uncertainties that our ancestors, our parents, and we ourselves have faced and are facing now, right? We have lived in the face of them, we have come through them, not always fully whole, often bearing huge, what do you even call it, psychic wounds from them, but we have come through. So even if we don't like uncertainty, we know it. And we know how to live with it, and we know how to live through it. What else? In these times, we have We have the ability to choose ways to keep ourselves grounded and whole as we move through them. And I want to remind us of some of the ones that I gathered up this week. One is, I am reminded that in times of uncertainty and change, we remind ourselves of what endures. So I went for a walk in the redwoods yesterday. You want a reminder of what endures through fire and storm and centuries? Lay your hand on a redwood. I know the earth needs our care, but that tree, those trees are full of a life force that moves in us too, that endures, and it's good to remember. And as Santana pointed out, we are embedded in a lot of relationships that are part of what endures and holds us, including this church that has held people and a state and a nation through hard times since it was founded, all that we named and more. We have the body of Thomas, I'm sorry, visitors, but you may not have noticed, we have the body of Thomas Starr King, who died, who's here, who only lived 4 years, a warning to all ministers that it could be short, so make good use of it. He's on our property. And if we're still able to pierce the thin veil, as I hope we are, I hope he is capable of blessing us and commanding us through this time. He who kept a state was a huge part of keeping the state of California free from being a slave state. And I remind us, and the baptismal font is hidden, but it was a gift and thanks for raising $1 million to tend to the wounded on both sides of the Civil War as a gesture real and vital of what unity and healing looked like and asked of us, and so much more. And this is part of what we carry with us, what we are holders of, us together, to step into this legacy and its living life and what it asks us to carry forward. What else? Well, this week, I called on 2 members of the church because I had a sense I needed them, and I did. And both of them have seen a whole lot of life and are meaning makers, as so many of you are, which is one of the gifts that we carry with us, to be among lifelong meaning makers. And between them, they named 2 things that are also useful in the face of uncertainty that I want to leave us with. Jeff told me, I'm outing him, that apparently Freud said, and if I get this wrong, it's on me, not on Jeff, because I wasn't taking notes, that there are 2 coping mechanisms, that we have lots of coping mechanisms, but that there are 2 that are the best for healthy responses to existential fear or uncertainty. One of them is altruism. That is to say, doing good works or acts of service, and not even ones related to the issue at hand. And as the other person I spoke to, Helen, said something very similar about right now she was focused on doing intentional acts, good words and good deeds only, putting only that into the world, checking any instincts to be small or angry or retributive and add to that spirit in the world. It struck me it is this kind of everyday resistance against the ugliness we see and that we fear will take root in the world. And it unfreezes us to do what we can to make the world not what we fear. And I thought of it this week as I took a baby salamander off the trail and put it in the sun, away from feet. And as I brought supper to a neighbor who lives currently on the corner just near my house, thinking it wouldn't change the election, but it was living unstuck, or as Gandhi would say, being the change we want to see in the everyday world. And I know I'm not alone in this, in just wanting to plow into the world goodness It's like a protective shield we put up, a balm. The other big and best coping strategy that Jeff suggested, that Freud endorsed, was one I hadn't expected. I would describe it as playful curiosity in the face of fear. It is a refusal, our refusal, to get anxious in all the ways that can seize us up and shuts down creative problem solving. Jeff is a retired psychiatrist, and he said he used to ask his patients in some of the hardest moments, what about this is really interesting and has unusual possibilities? I love that. It refuses to get stuck in the dead end. It asks where in the world where doors close, if they do, there is a place where fun and learning and life and love and creativity and divinity might show up. And to keep life insistently in this generative flow. And it may actually be the most revolutionary stance we can take in the face of what tries to make us seize up and get small, to be like alchemists in this world. Whenever we have uncertainty in our hands, or fear, or ugliness, to turn it all around and say, ooh, let's just see. What could we make of this? Let's have some fun here. Adrienne Marie Brown, who is a wonderful reimaginer of movements, is all about playfulness in the face, even of injustice, even of small-heartedness. And the rabbi of this morning, faced with cynicism, someone who wants to discredit the wise, reminds that person and all who watch on, you hold life in your hands all the time. And not just you, but you and me. And with all that's uncertain in the world, what is 100% true is this: that we have resilience in our bloodlines, and we have a true, proven record of facing uncertainty with each other in locked arms, in love, and embracing the playful ability to choose courage and joy in the face of anything. And we have determination and resources and ancestors that show the way. And we hold life in our hands, invited to give it flight, no matter what the storms, no matter what plays out in the weather, in the uncertain turns of the weeks ahead. And that is certain. And it's good to remember that.